I had done all the things. I had gotten my National Magazine Award wins and I had done every kind of story you can imagine. I got to ProPublica and I was like, wait, I'm not these people are investigative journalists. Like, I'm just a
Mm.
magazine writer. There was such a learning curve. It was learning on the job, right? It was learning as you go. And it's so fun. I mean, I feel like that's the thing that's sometimes lost with investigative journalism when people talk about it is you're uncovering a mystery.
Welcome to The Stacks, a podcast about books and the people who read them. I'm your host, Tracy Thomas, and today we are joined by ProPublica reporter and New York Times Magazine staff writer Pamela Colloff to discuss her debut book, Catch the Devil, a story of murder, deception, and injustice on the Gulf Coast. In this book, we delve into the life of a career con man, Paul Skalnick, whose pattern of trading fabricated prison confessions for his own freedom landed a Vietnam veteran on death row for a murder he did not commit. Today, Pamela and I talk about why people cannot get enough of con men, how she handles reporting on the worst parts of people's lives, and why she wanted to be an investigative journalist in the first place. Our book club pick for July is Behind the Beautiful Forevers, Life, Death, and Hope in a Mumbai Undercity by Catherine Bu. We will discuss the book with Juliana Hobner on Wednesday, July 29th. If you like this podcast and want more bookish content, more community, consider joining the Stacks Pack on Patreon and subscribing to my newsletter Unstacked on Substack. It's not complicated. By joining either of these places, you support the work that I do. You make it possible for me to continue making this show, to work with my incredible team here at the Stacks, and you, dear listener, get bonus content for yourself. You get access to our virtual book club. You get to hear me wax poetic about sports and pop culture. You get to be part of our Discord. You get a monthly bonus episode. And again, you make it possible for me to make the show every single week. So to join, you're going to go to patreon.com/thestacks for the Stacks Pack. And you can check out my newsletter at tracythomas.substack.com. All right, now it is time for my conversation with Pamela Colloff. All right, everybody, I am so excited. Every so often, I get to read some juicy narrative nonfiction that makes me feel like, books are awesome. And today I'm talking to an author of one of those exact kind of books. The book is called Catch the Devil, a true story of murder, deception, and injustice on the Gulf Coast. And my guest is the author, Pamela Colloff. Pamela, welcome to the Stacks.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm thrilled to have you. Let's just dive in. 30 seconds or so. Can you tell folks about the book?
So the book is about a man named Paul Skalnick, who is a former police officer turned con artist extraordinaire. And he figures out a get out of jail free trick, which is every time he gets caught doing what he's doing, he goes to police or prosecutors and he says, hey, that guy in the cell next to me, like he just confessed everything that he did in this crime and be happy to help you guys out. And then he would be the star witness against that person. And in return, he would get his freedom and be released to do more. And so the book follows him through his 9 different wives, some of whom he was married to at the same time, and these various cases and the collateral damage of the women and men left behind.
And there's one particular case that you sort of talk about in the book. Will you tell us about Jim Daly?
Yeah, so Jim Daly is currently still on Florida's death row. He landed there in 1987 because of testimony that Paul Skalnick gave against him at his capital murder trial. And what we see as this investigation proceeds is that the person who likely committed this crime was his housemate at the time, who has confessed to it multiple times and then retracted those confessions. But because Paul Skalnick's testimony stands that Jim supposedly confessed to him, Jim is caught still, he's 80 years old, on Florida's death row and could be sentenced or could receive a death warrant at any moment.
I know this is going to sound really crazy, but I know that people are put to death, obviously. And I know that people die in prison. But for some reason, it has never actually occurred to me what that means to die in prison. Like, that is a thing that
Yes.
happens that is so deeply cruel and inhumane. Like, the idea that you could just be in a place, a prison. I don't know. It's an
So
upsetting thought.
it's well, you're making me happy in what you say because the book really wants you to contemplate that. I actually just wrote a cover story for the New York Times Magazine about this subject and about how Florida, where much of my book is set, is executing more people per year than all other states combined. And I tell the story of a priest who works with these men, preparing them to die. And I think we don't really think about, we think about they're bad guys, they're terrible crimes. Some maybe in some people's opinion deserve death. We don't really think about what that looks like.
Yeah.
And we don't think about, in Jim's case, I was able to tell what all those decades, I mean, think about life in 1987 versus now, right?
I was born in 1986. Okay.
Okay. So perfect.
This whole thing takes place in the
Over
course
the
of my
span of your
life.
life.
Yes.
Right. Right. And one of the interesting struggles that yielded something I'm really proud of in the book was how do I convey to readers what that time is like? What is it like to sit in a room that's when you're on death watch, you have 30 days before your execution. And he was on death watch in 2019 before getting a stay. What is it like to sit in a 12 by 12 foot room with no windows and await that? What is it like to be there for decades? And so that sounds so dark, but one of the things that came out in my reporting, I connected with his pen pal in the Netherlands, who he had been writing to since the 90s. And it was the depths of the pandemic. And I was just like, oh my God, how am I going to tell this story? And I said to her, do you have any of his letters? Is it possible that you kept any of that? And she said, let me look. I've got lots of time. It was during lockdown. She crawls into her attic. She finds this stacks and stacks boxes of, she'd kept every letter he had ever written her since 1998.
Wow.
And so I'm able to use the letters and their really beautiful relationship that develops over the course of those decades. She goes from being a single woman to married to a mom, all these different transitions. They each have all these different losses. And they find this connection, and the letters allow you to hear what he was thinking and feeling with contemporaneous accounts in real time, because it's so hard when you go back and try to interview someone.
Yeah.
What were you feeling on that afternoon in 1999, right? You can't recapture it, but with a letter you can. And that was such a gift.
Yeah. I mean, I think this, not to get too nerdy, but like from a craft standpoint, what's really interesting about this book is that you've juxtaposed these two men and you sort of use Jim as a way to tell Paul's story, and you're using Paul in a lot of ways to tell Jim's story. So how were you sort of thinking about these two, protagonist, antagonist? Though I think,
Yes.
I think Paul is the protagonist, like he's like the evil villain. It's an evil villain story, but like, how are you thinking about that?
I know from your conversation with Patrick Radden Keefe that braided narrative is not a term that we like.
Well, it's not that I don't like braided narrative. I use it. The thing is that I feel like people use it for everything.
Absolutely.
It's like everything's it's a braided memoir. I'm like, okay.
Right. What does that even mean?
Yeah, I like braided narratives. Like those are the kind of books that I like to read when you're pulling all these different pieces together. But I think the term is like starting to be meaningless.
Totally. And the book kind of has, I'd say, 3 different strands. So there's the con man sort of, and I start it in a sort of catch me if you can type way. A lot of what the book is trying to do is turn that romance with the con artist on its head, but it's playing with it. And we follow him through all his hijinks and crazy things he does until it gets pretty dark. And then we have Jim and his journey. He was this kid with so much promise in Manhattan, Kansas, just a beloved guy. And then he went to Vietnam and things really went off the rails there. And telling that story was very moving to do, and I hope it reads that way. And then the third strand are really a lot of the women who were left in the wake
Mm.
of Skalnick, of the collateral damage. Some of these ex-wives who their lives were completely destroyed. He would clear them out financially and really rob them emotionally of being able to trust people again. And then their daughters who he preyed upon, and whose accounts when they went to police were not believed because he had become too valuable to prosecutors at that point. So I think bringing all those things together and having each sort of reflect back on one another was something I was playing with the whole time. And calibrating that and structuring that was a big challenge of the story. But I think we finally figured it out.
I think you did figure it out. I mean, I think as I said, I love a villain. I love a con man story. Like, I think that I am maybe part of the problem, right? Like, I feel like we're not supposed to like a Paul Skalnick because he's done so many bad things. Uh, and I think you've done a really nice job of sort of reminding me of that. Because
Well,
it's sort of easy in the beginning to be like, oh, this is fun. This is a caper. Like, ooh.
right.
And by the end, I was like, hate this guy a lot. Like, I'm not having, like, I stopped having fun. I enjoyed the book, but I stopped having fun in that way.
Yes. I think the beginning of the book is more the caper and the adventure of it all. And the latter half is more the emotional resonance and sort of the fallout of that. But I think, I mean, we all love that romance. That's part of why I wrote a book about a con artist. I'd been looking for a jailhouse snitch story forever. But
oh, really?
To find this, like, I always would think of Jack Nicholson when I was writing the sort of mischievous, you can't help but sort of like him, even though he's a scoundrel type. That's how I always thought of him. And I think it's important. We love that kind of character and seeing what they can get away with. And the story, like, how far can you get? How much can you push the envelope?
Yes.
How wild of a story can you tell and people will believe it? And I'm fascinated with all of that. And there's some humor in this book. Like, some of the things he does are so funny and ridiculous.
Yeah.
And I felt like you needed that because other parts of it are heavy, right?
Yeah.
And I hope that because there's some light and funny stuff in there, that when you get to the more emotionally resonant work, that it almost hits harder.
Yeah. I think also, like, just hearing you say like Jack Nicholson, and I was thinking a little bit of like Leonardo DiCaprio and the Catch Me If You Can stuff. I think oftentimes what stories about these kinds of like con men who will do anything to get what they want or like service themselves is that we don't often see the impact. And so I feel like having a Jim Daly where it's like, this is all fun and cute, except for there's a literal person on death row for 40 years who's now an 80-year-old man for a crime that it feels like he didn't commit. I mean,
Yes, that's what the book suggests.
Yeah, I think that's what the book suggests. I think that's what, I mean, given what you've presented, that feels like what the evidence suggests.
And I think, it's interesting because in Jim's part of the story, there he is. It's such a very hard fact of what he's having to deal with. He's run through his appeals. There's not a lot of hope at this point. But I was fascinated with him. Something that made him actually hard to write about, and I had to be creative in how I got the material I needed, is to survive all those years of such sensory deprivation and you're so apart from the world. He had to be, and he already was sort of hardwired this way before alcoholism and Vietnam got him off course. But he's sort of this relentlessly optimistic, cheerful person. I remember when I wrote about him for the New York Times Magazine, initially our photographer had to ask him not to smile because it didn't match the tenor of the piece. But I mention that because I feel like one of the gifts of writing, I mean, I almost entirely write about prisoners and the criminal justice system, is you get to see the world through their eyes, especially in the wrongful conviction cases I've written about through exonerees. And so that means these tiny little joys that we don't think anything about, like a good cup of coffee, sitting outside, your feet touching the grass. I remember one exoneree talked to me about the beauty and joy of going into a grocery store and seeing all the different colors and textures. And um, so as dark as some of this is, and I tried to bring that in the book, like Jim, his outlet is through these paintings that he makes. And when he has paint, that's his outlet, or it's seeing his ex-wife, who they've now reconciled and she's still the love of his life, coming to see him. And so trying to find those bright moments.
Yeah. I mean, you've done so much work. I was saying before we started recording that you're like a real journalist. Like, I talk to journalists who write books, but like you're like a JJ journalist. And that is high praise, because my real dream job is to be like do a Watergate, is like to like expose something crazy to the world. Though I literally have no idea how one would do that. But I read All the President's Men and was like, oh,
me too.
That's the job I want. I took 0 steps towards that. So, but you actually do that, Pamela. You get people out of jail.
Well, not as often as one would hope, but
sure, we'd like to get everybody out, but like you've gotten like at least like 500% more people out than I have. Like I've gotten 0 people out. But I guess the question is, first and foremost, how did you know you wanted to do this work? How did coming in and telling these stories become sort of your lane?
Sure. So I think there are a lot of different lanes, but when I was a teenager, I saw Errol Morris's documentary, The Thin Blue Line. And I don't know how many listeners will be familiar with that, but it's about a wrongful conviction case in Dallas. And the film was mind-boggling to me because it's a documentary, but it is as beautiful as any feature film that you'll ever see. And it is incredibly creative with this Philip Glass score and this just incredibly beautiful cinematography and storytelling. And so that movie was sort of an awakening I was a total bookworm, and we can talk about that later, but it was an awakening to a type of storytelling. I always try to say that I do character-driven narrative nonfiction. Mm-hmm. So it is investigative journalism, but I feel like sometimes you can hear the words investigative journalism and it sounds like kind of a drag.
Not to me.
To me, character-driven narrative nonfiction that's rooted in, this book is rooted in, I don't know how many hundreds of public record requests that I did and attorneys before me did. That to me, having something read almost a little bit more like fiction, but you can fact check every sentence. And it's really immersive and it's engaging and it's emotional. That's what I wanted to do. And that film was everything. And then there were so many other things along the way, of course, but that was pretty formative.
And then how did you do it? How do you do it? I don't know. I don't feel like it's like every day you get to talk to someone who does the work that you do.
But it's so fun. So everyone feels imposter syndrome, right?
Sure.
So I came to ProPublica and the New York Times Magazine. Let me explain my job because it's a little confusing, and then I'll backtrack. Yeah. So I'm co-employed by the New York Times Magazine, where I'm a staff writer, and ProPublica, where I'm a reporter. And every story of mine is co-published by both news organizations, and they have different missions, right? So the idea is to marry this really rigorous reporting and investigative journalism to really full, beautiful storytelling that's, magazine type style writing. And so I got that job in 2017, and I came from a magazine called Texas Monthly, which does incredible narrative, nonfiction, long-form work.
Their feature writer just won the Pulitzer, right?
Won the Pulitzer, yes.
For that episode. Oh my God, that story.
It's an incredible
Yeah.
incredible essay about that he wrote in like 24, 36 hours after his family survived this deadly flood. So I came to this job in 2017. I had spent 20 years at Texas Monthly, and this goes to the imposter syndrome thing I'm trying to say. I had done all the things. I had gotten my National Magazine Award wins, and I had done every kind of story you can imagine. I got to ProPublica and I was like, wait, I'm not these people are investigative journalists. Like they know what they're doing. I'm just a magazine writer, and there was such a learning curve of how do I take these storytelling chops that I had developed previously and learn the skills of the Woodwards and Bernsteins around me, to go back to your Watergate reference. And, it was learning on the job, right? It was learning as you go. And it's so fun. I mean, I feel like that's the thing that's sometimes lost with investigative journalism when people talk about it, is you're uncovering a mystery and you're able to call up whoever you want to call up and ask them whatever you want to ask them.
Yeah.
And then try to back that up with records. And it's always fun. It's always a little bit of a mystery.
Do you like gossip in your regular life?
I love gossip. I live for gossip.
Okay, me too.
I have two teenagers who are like, really have to stop asking me for the
Oh my gosh. I cannot wait till my kids are gossip age. They're only 6 right now. And I'm like, you guys are so boring. Like, what happened at school today?
It's so well. And then there are the years where they tell you things, and then there are the years where they stop telling you things entirely. But no, I was a total bookworm when I was little. And my favorite book for a while was Harriet the Spy. Is this a book that you know?
I know the movie. I'd never read the books, but I know.
Yes, the book. Yeah. I think the book is far superior. But the book is about this very nosy girl who just wants to know everything. And for me, that was the model. That was me.
That was you.
Yeah, that sort of informs all of this work to some degree.
I love it. I love it so much. I feel like, I don't know, this is just a sense that I have. I feel like people who love gossip are particularly susceptible to loving a con man story.
Yeah.
Because it just is so juicy. Because, there are people who don't like gossip, which is, to me, like so upsetting and confusing. I'm like, how are you alive? But there are people who are like, they're like, oh, I don't gossip. I don't like gossip. I don't care. It's not my business. I'm like, what do you mean? It's everyone's business. It's out in the world. We need to know.
Well, when I was in high school, Allen Ginsberg came to speak at my high school. Yes. And I was obsessed with his at that age, 17, Jack Kerouac and the Beats were everything to me. So Allen Ginsberg came to my high school, and my high school newspaper, which, was just, it did not do any interesting work, was just sort of documenting basic things that were happening, didn't even bother to come to show up to cover this. And I decided, I was like, I've got to start something. Like, I've got to do something. I have to have a way to, we can't let this go unnoticed. So I grabbed my best looking guy friend, because it's Allen Ginsberg, and walked up to him after the reading was over. And we just said this on the fly. We said, we'd like to interview you. I think we said for a newspaper. We didn't want to lie to him. Oh. And we ended up creating a newspaper because of this. But
oh my gosh.
We said, we would just love it if there's any way we could take you to coffee after this reading and just ask you a few questions and do a Q&A for our paper, however we phrased it.
Yeah.
And he went and sat with us at a coffee shop for, I want to say it was close to 3 hours. And I mean, imagine you get to ask him anything. And then we, edited it down into this incredible Q&A, and that inspired starting this paper. The reason I am telling this story is that day it occurred to me that if you approach someone as a journalist, I mean, what was I? I was 17 years old. I had no credentials whatsoever, but I said I was a reporter, right? That is this card, this entryway into this whole other world. And you have the right to go ask Allen Ginsberg for coffee. And he says yes.
Yeah.
I mean, if I just walked up to him afterward and said, gosh, I just love your poetry. Is there any way we could go get coffee for 3 hours? Like, I'm not
He'd
sure he
probably
would have
be
said
like,
yes.
no. Well,
Right.
that's why I
So,
started this podcast, so that I could ask the
right.
authors that I wanted to ask the questions I wanted to ask. Like, why did you name your
Exactly.
character Susan? Like, that's such a weird name. Or like,
Right.
do you like gossip, Pamela Colloff, serious journalist? Like, I don't know, but I'm going to ask because I get to. It's true. It's like if you
Absolutely.
just have like a microphone, or if you just say you're writing for a
Yeah.
paper, like people might say yes to you.
And they do. And then, you can ask within reason. You want to be respectful and
Yeah.
I mean, there are all sorts of things now I do ethically that I did not do at the beginning of my career. I had to learn some things the hard way. But generally speaking, if you take care, you can ask people, I don't want to say almost anything, but
Yeah.
you really can. And one of the surprises to come out of this work is how many people don't feel listened to, or don't feel people understand them, or nobody knows their story, and they want to talk. And investigative journalism, that can be really helpful because you can, as long as you can back up what you're saying with records, those people will help you get where you want to go.
And then their story also gets to be part of the record.
Well, and I've seen so much of how that affects people. So there's a girl in the book now my age, in her 50s. She was 12 years old at the time that she met Paul Skalnick. And he was, again, this sort of larger than life, louche character. And she became very infatuated with him and fascinated with him. And he preyed upon that and took advantage of that and sexually abused her. And she eventually went to police, reported this, was hooked up to a polygraph, had to take a polygraph. This is without her parents, a male officer leading her to do this. And mind you, Paul Skalnick, the man who goes on to testify against upwards of 40 different people, some of them in capital cases, is never made to take a polygraph. So she goes through this ordeal. Ultimately, the case is not prosecuted because Paul Skalnick is too valuable of a witness to the state attorney's office. And long story short, the prosecutors make her case go away. And this is 1982. I come back in 2019 when I was working on the magazine story that this book grew out of, and reached out to her. And by that point, I had all the documents. I had all her statements. I had 2 witness statements. I mean, you never see witness statements with sexual assault. I had everything. So I call her. It was a long process of getting her, understandably, to trust me and feel comfortable talking to me and to understand the importance of telling the story. But what I'm trying to say in too long of a way is, while her story was very important for me to tell in the story, the act of telling it was huge in her life.
Yeah.
She had walked for all those years without feeling believed. And like, did I make this up? How did this happen? That nothing ever happened to him. And to be believed, and then to have this written about and to have other people believe it, she told me was life-changing. So what I'm trying to say is, investigative journalism in its best form can cause change in the world, in the things that you're writing about. But it also, I think for me, feeling shy about asking people hard questions, I try to remember things like that, like with Karen, and how that was very beneficial for her as well.
We're going to take a super quick break, and then we'll be right back. It is officially summer, and you know what that means. It means pool and beach season. I have been spending so much time outside by the water with the minis. They know how to swim now, and it is literally all they want to do. What do I want to do? I want to lay down on a towel and be comfy cozy, which is why I am obsessed with Cozy Earth's plush towels. That's right. My love for Cozy Earth has gone beyond just comfortable bedding. jammies, slippers, robes. I am now taking my favorite brand to the poolside. I am not kidding when I tell you that these Cozy Earth towels are amazing. They're the perfect blend of style and practicality. I have these ones that are so much fun. They've got this oversized stripe pattern and hot pink, orange, and white. They're capturing summer and whimsy, and they're made from a blend of cotton and viscose from bamboo, which means they're soft and smooth and also absorb moisture faster than your regular old yucky cotton towel. Plus, they're designed to withstand things like salt water and sand because the people at Cozy Earth think of everything. And just like with their bedding, they get softer with every wash. Go ahead, try it for yourself. There's no risk. Cozy Earth backs your purchase with a 10-year warranty, and they give you 100 nights to try new bedding to make sure you love it. If you don't, returns are hassle-free. So head to cozyearth.com and use my code THESTACKS for an exclusive 20% off. That's code THESTACKS for an exclusive 20% off. And if you see a post-purchase survey, mention that you heard about Cozy Earth right here. Have a business idea but don't know where to start? I know the feeling. I was there when I first started this very podcast. I quickly realized it required way more than interviewing authors and just like reading some books. There were scripts to write, brand assets to create, and eventually merch to sell. Luckily, by the time I was ready to sell, I had already discovered Shopify. If you've been sitting on a business idea, just know that Shopify makes it easy to bring it to life and start selling. Shopify Checkout makes shopping a breeze for your customers, offering a secure place for them to enter their information and easily complete their purchase. The process is even smoother after their first order. When they come back, their details are already saved, so they're only one tap away from securing a shiny new item or a comfy new sweatshirt in the case of the stacks. And since Shopify handles setup and checkout, you can focus on what you do best, growing your business. With Shopify, nothing stands between your idea and a real business. So go make it one. Start your free trial at shopify.com/thestacks. That's shopify.com/thestacks. Hello, hello. We are in the midst of summer, which is my favorite season and also a very fun season over here at The Stacks. As always, we are bringing you a ton of great new reads, author interviews, and behind the scenes bookish gossip and chit chat. But if you find yourself craving a little more, consider supporting us on Patreon and Substack as well. On Patreon, which is our community-focused bonus content hub, you can join our virtual book club. You can be part of our private Discord. You can read with us for our year-long mega reading challenge. Plus, there are monthly bonus episodes. Over on Substack, you can subscribe to my newsletter Unstacked, where I give my hot takes on books and pop culture and sports and food and whatever else I want. On both the Patreon and the Substack, you also have access to my nonfiction reading guide, but it only is available through the end of summer. So make sure you subscribe now to either Patreon or Substack or both to get access to that. And if you don't have a few dollars to spare right now, don't worry. There are free options on Patreon and Substack so you can keep up with the goings on around here. Making this podcast is a huge team effort, and by supporting my Patreon and Substack, you allow me to support my team so we can all continue to work together doing what we do best, which is bringing you bookish content, this very podcast. So if you or your friends are looking to meet other bookish people, support an independent podcast, come hang out with me, Patreon, Substack, or both. Go to patreon.com/thestacks and tracythomas.substack.com, and we will see you in the stacks. Okay, we're back. You just casually mentioned learning lessons the hard way in the questions you asked. Can you share a lesson or two? I'm just so curious what that means.
So many. We could do an entire podcast.
I feel like
Pam's
you should.
hard lessons.
I would love that.
So one of the things I love about journalism is that you just kind of get thrown in, right? There's not a lot of training. I think it's actually a really beautiful thing about my profession that, you know, people do go to graduate school for it. I don't recommend that, but you cut your teeth doing it. Yeah. Sort of like public defenders get just like thrown into the mix. It's the same thing. So I had a staff job at Texas Monthly at 25 years old, which was, I still don't understand how that happened, but every day I was sure I was going to be fired. They were going to figure out that I had no idea what I was doing. And so there were so many things. I remember early on, when I wrote tough things about someone, let's say it was a more investigative piece, and this was back when I was in my 20s, I would write it, we would fact check it, we would publish it, and then I would sort of just be in this crouch position until they happened to find it and read it. And then I got the blowback or the reaction. That is the absolute opposite of how I work now. It's not fair to people. It's easy to make mistakes. So now I have this sort of radical transparency with sources where, let's say I'm writing something, and this happened in the book. There were people who would not speak to me, did not want to have anything to do with the book. And I have a pretty harsh assessment of their work as prosecutors or investigators back in the 80s and 90s. So if, let's say somebody doesn't speak to me, I now go back to them. I send them sort of a paraphrased version of what I'll be writing to give them a heads up. We are publishing this on this date. Here's broadly what I say. If I've gotten anything wrong, if you dispute this, if you think I've mischaracterized anything, please let me know. And it's a process from there that can go in different ways. And it's just, when I think about, sort of the golden rule, like how would I want someone to do this with me, right? I think a more painful one was in my 20s, I wrote a lot about, young people. I was seen as like the young person on staff, the voice of a generation. Yeah. So I'm joking. I was not seen as that. And so I wrote a lot about teenagers and often teenage girls and sort of teenage life in Texas. And I would sort of embed with people. Like I would spend a lot of time. I always say to people when we sort of talk initially about whether or not I'll tell someone that I hope to write about them and here's what that would involve. I say this is going to take a long time. It's going to be annoying and you're going to be really sick of me by the time this is done because I'm going to be around all the time. So I was doing that with girls I was not that much older with. And I think for them, they've never been written about in the media before. They don't really know what a reporter is. Yeah. The lines got really blurred. Was I a reporter? Was I a friend? It didn't matter. Even sometimes when I would have my notebook out as a reminder that I'm writing about this, that this was going to be in an article that was for sale in the grocery store that they and all their friends and friends' parents went to. And I remember there was one girl who just felt that it had gone too far, that I had said too much, even though we had gone over it in fact checking and, I didn't do anything underhanded. Right. But I spend so much time now with sources, especially the people who entrust me with a story and allow me to spend time with them to make sure that I am as ethically doing my job as possible. I explain to them why I'm asking certain questions, what the story is that I'm trying to tell. And it can sometimes be an almost collaborative process. And that is so different when I was just this scared kid who had no idea what she was doing.
I have like 1,000 follow-up questions, but I think the one that I'm the most, I want to ask, because I know we have other things to talk about, is like, you've been doing this work for a long time. And obviously this story that you're talking about from when you were in your early 20s about this girl has stuck with you. How much are you sort of reevaluating your process, your ethics, like what you're doing as you go still now at this age, like as like back then you were a newbie, but now like you're capital P, capital C. So I'm just thinking about like maybe like regrets or like how that shapes how you move going forward.
I think it's always front of mind. Like I feel such a responsibility when people agree to spend substantial amounts of time with me or to talk, usually with what I'm writing about. It's the most painful thing that's ever happened to them. Sure. Maybe it's losing a child. Maybe it's going to prison. Maybe it's fill in the blank. Really tough stuff. And, no matter how many times you go over something with someone before it's published, it's just different when it's out there in the world. It's on the internet. It's
Right.
everywhere. It's being taken out of context.
Well, and like people are calling them being like, saw you in the New York Times, which is different than you being like, this is going to be in the New York Times. Like that's like very theoretical versus like totally. I'm holding the magazine.
Yes. Or like the Daily Mail takes some snippet of the story and turns it into some other thing.
Something yucky.
So I think I'm always just evaluating that and how can I be sensitive to the challenges of this? How can I partner with people when it's appropriate? How can I be sensitive to what they're worried about? I published a story earlier this week that I knew was going on. It was going online at 5 a.m. Eastern. I live in Texas, so I'm an hour behind. And I woke up at 4 a.m. just like in a cold sweat and did not, the cortisol is like coursing through me until I've heard from every source saying like, I thought that, you really captured what we talked about and this was fair. And so I really try to honor that. So I'm always sweating it. And P.S. every story, and if I ever do a book again, which I hope to do, I'm convinced at the outset that, this is the one that breaks me. Like I have no idea. I can't remember how to write. I don't know how to do this. This is so hard. I'll never figure my way out of this Byzantine, So it doesn't get easier. And actually, there's a wonderful writer I used to work with. He's passed away, Gary Cartwright, who is this sort of Hunter S. Thompson of Texas, basically. And I was asking him this. I was probably about 30 at the time, and I had just been through an awful writing process. I feel like each one takes a lot out of me, to be honest with you. And I asked him about that, and I said, gosh, does it ever get easier? And he said, if it gets easier, it's time to hang it up, time to stop doing it. And that, I've thought about that a lot, that there's this, I don't mean that you should be in agony all the time. And your work should be difficult at all times. But if you're phoning it in, if you're not wrestling with this, if you're not worrying about how it's going to impact your sources, or what if I don't get that person to talk to me, or what if I'm wrong? My friend Maurice Chammah calls it the error terrors, which I love. If you're not sweating, like you're doing something wrong, I think, in this line of work.
You're writing the thing, you've got your sources, you spend all this time with them, you put something together, you send that draft or whatever to them. You're like, this is the part, I mean, that's what I assume. You send like, this is the part you're in. No,
so I'm not allowed to do that.
You're not allowed to do anything.
So that's one of the tricky things. So standard across all news organizations is you can't send the actual story out before publication or even parts of it. So I'll be holding it in my hand, for example, and calling them and saying, and then I say, you did this and you felt this way about it. Does that sound right to you?
Got it. So you are sort of still checking with them once you've taken everything, all your like raw materials, your interviews, the time you spend together, the, documents from court records or whatever, you write your thing, then you call and you sort of paraphrase kind of.
And this is just for the very sensitive. I don't do this for all parts of a story. And part of that is because at the Times it goes through a rigorous fact-checking process.
Got it.
Most of my magazine stories have 3 fact checkers on them. So and lawyers. So it's intense. But it's more like for the really sensitive parts of a piece, I want to make sure somebody is comfortable with it. And so just as an example, going back to Karen Parker, the 12-year-old girl, I describe in great detail both her infatuation with Paul Skalnick and then the sexual encounter that happens between them, that she's very confused about how to feel about, because she's got a big crush on him. Like, it's very complicated. I try to get into the complications of it. It was very illegal, to be clear.
Yes. The emotional complication. There's no complication about him abusing a 12-year-old, but the complication is like how she felt about it.
Exactly. Exactly. And to me, that was very interesting to write about. It's like, how does she come to terms with that? And why does she end up going to police? And how did she get there? But so that was material that I went over with her in person. I went to Florida, sat with her in a restaurant, and we had a nice meal. And then I sort of described and read little pieces of it back to her, because I wanted every word of that to be something not just accurate, but true to her emotional experience, comfortable, and that she was comfortable with.
What if she says to you, Pamela, no, I don't want this in there? Then what do you do? How do you balance your story that you've got to tell and your job as a journalist and the sensitivity to this person who's opened up to you and told you about this horrible thing that happened when they were 12 that has basically shaped their life for the next 40 years?
Yes. So I think there are a lot of different things that can happen at that point. If it's, I don't want that level of detail in there, or I don't want my current name. I use her married name rather than the name she had when she was 12. There are ways in which we can soften that, or we can find a way to still include it. If someone is more adamant about it and it's an issue like sexual assault, in that case, I would just write about it in a much more bird's eye view from records without their name.
Mm-hmm.
But the way I wrote this is almost like fiction, where you're in her head and you're sort of experiencing this as it happens.
Okay. I could do this all day. I'm supposed to be talking about the book, and we are talking about the book, but I just think, like, this is my opinion about what I do. My sense is that the least interesting thing we could talk about is the book, because people will get the book. The book is good. You should read it at home, but you're not going to get this part of it from reading the book. So I am torn, because I'm like, I want to talk about the book, but also the book is the book and it's great and you're going to get it. And so this is like very exciting to me.
I mean, I could talk about craft with you till the cows come home. Like, there's nothing I love more. And I always love with the narrative nonfiction writers who I admire, I love hearing how it came together and how they got things and the things they didn't get. They're the things you have to write around and the mysteries that remain. And I love all that.
I love it too. That's like the gossipy side of it, right? It's like, what's the thing you can't get from the book? Because my opinion is, like, the book should be good enough to stand on its own,
Yes.
And then the part that we don't get is all the stuff you're grappling with to make the book good enough to stand it on its own. But that is a question. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, with a book or an article, it's sort of like, okay, I think of it like when you go to the Olympics, when you watch the Olympics and you see maybe the ice skating finals. And let's say you've never ice skated before. And you're like, oh, that's so beautiful. And they're so graceful. And then if you try it, you're like, wait, what? How? And I feel like great writing, that's what it's like. Yes. It is at such a high level, and you're just experiencing the storytelling and the characters. Yes. And that's always what I'm trying to do. Like, I mean, I can't even tell you how many thousands of court documents, years of public record requests, on and on and on and on this book is based on, but there's not one sentence in the book that says, comma, according to such this and such record. Document. Right. Yeah. It's written in such a way, and this is what I always try to do. It's like, I do so much research. I talk to so many people that I get to a level of confidence that I can write in a more creative and omniscient way about what happened. Creative based in fact, do you know what I'm saying? But I can bring in things like emotions and things that are not in a cold court record, because I've done the reporting to fill that in. So ideally, you read a book like my book and you don't even think about the sourcing. You just think, wow, she knows a lot. And then you get to the end at notes on sources, and maybe you're interested and you dig in and you're impressed, and maybe you don't. Maybe it's just the storytelling. That's the goal to me.
Yeah, and your notes on sources is written and it's not like one that's not like footnotes. It's like you go through. It's really cool actually. It's like also narratively written.
Yes, so I that was intentional because when I read narrative nonfiction, I am always trying to piece together how did they get that? How did they know that?
Yeah.
And that's just my weird brain. And so I'll be flipping back to the footnotes, and the footnotes don't really tell you a lot. It's like a
Yeah.
page number in something or
Yeah.
a reference to an interview. So I very intentionally wrote notes on sources in a narrative way so that for the reporting nerds,
Yeah.
they could dig in there and see how I put it together. And also, maybe there's something in there, for someone like me when I was starting off to learn how to do that and to give them
Mm,
permission. Like, hey, once you read these 218 documents about this event, you can write about it in a way that's like a scene. And
yeah.
you don't have to do those attributions because you've done the work.
Yeah. You mentioned some of the stuff that you love to talk and think about is like what's not in there, like what you couldn't get. So what's not in this book that you wish could have been?
I think every good project, there are pieces of it that you don't know. They're the mysteries you can't fully solve. And oh gosh, there's so many things. So I was able to track down the fact that Paul Skalnick was married 9 times to 9 different women. He was a bigamist, so um, there was a lot going on sometimes at the same time. That's what we know of. I also know he did fake marriages. He
Mm,
abandoned women at the altar. Uh, I'm certain. I mean, I document 3 teenage girls who he preyed upon. I'm certain there were
there's more.
more. I could go on and on and on about all the different things. I, I mean, as anyone who picks up the book will see, it's extensive what I get into about what he did in Florida and Texas. Some other states where I know he spent some time, particularly Louisiana, which are not as transparent with records.
Hmm.
It's like a black box, right?
Interesting.
So my secret hope is the book comes out and a few people come out of the woodwork, and it would just be for me. I'm not going to write a sequel,
Yeah.
but it would sort of help to answer some of those questions. And then I think there's just the larger question. I leave it open ended because I had to about why Paul Skalnick did the things that he did.
Yeah.
There's a scene toward the end of the book I don't want to ruin where I go and visit him on what turned out to be his deathbed. And we have this absolutely bonkers conversation where I ask him a lot of things and he says some really off the wall, but revealing answers. And I sort of came to think through my conversations with him that he was the last person who could provide insight into who he was. I had to find it other ways. I had to find it
Mm,
both through his actions and through the people around him. And
yeah.
that's why so much of the book focuses on them.
Yeah. This is sort of a hard shift, but I always like to ask, like, how do you like to write? Where are you? How many hours a day? Music or no? Snacks or beverages? Rituals? Tell me about it.
So, okay, so I am one of these writers. Whenever I hear writers say, I sit down at my desk at 9 and I play classical music and I do this and this, I it's funny, I'm very, very organized and disciplined in the work itself, but in my work process, I am just like a hot mess. I mean,
Okay.
you know, um, when I am really, really into a story, there is no work-life balance. I don't sleep much. It is all I'm thinking about when I'm brushing my teeth, when I'm driving, when I'm in the shower. If I see friends, I'm talking about it and
Mm,
gauging their reactions to what I'm saying. It becomes a really all-consuming thing. So I both love that process and dread it because it's very intense for me. There's a lot of coffee involved, and there's a lot. I need long stretches of uninterrupted time. So I think this goes counter to everything we're supposed to do, but like I try to get the emails and phone calls done very first thing in the morning and then just kind of shut it all down and go into the work. But I have a lot of trouble if I'm pulled out of it, getting back in it.
Yeah.
My favorite part of the process is reporting. It's not writing. I love being out in the world, meeting new people, hearing their stories, following them on various adventures, having crazy stories to come home to tell my friends.
Yeah. Yeah. The gossipy part.
Exactly.
The writing part, this is the scam of the whole job.
Exactly.
In your comments, you mention the Watchdog Writers Group. What is this? Can you say more?
The Watchdog Writers Group, I'm so glad you asked, is this amazing group that started in 2020 at the University of Missouri, started by a man named Chris Leonard, who's an amazing author in and of himself. And he saw through his own book writing how desperately lonely and hard and just what an endeavor book writing is. The financial and emotional strain are intense. So he set out to start this program, miraculously got funding for it, where you get a year-long fellowship. It's an extremely generous stipend. When I did it, it was $50,000.
Wow.
50. You also get, again, at the time I did it, I think it's still the same, a researcher who's a undergraduate or graduate student in the journalism program at the University of Missouri. And so if you can imagine having that kind of money, and having a
support.
Researcher, and then we would have these check-ins, and at the time it was there were a bunch of different writers who cycled through it, but it was usually a cohort of anywhere from 3 to 5 writers. And here was this group of people who were going through the same exact things. You know, my big struggle going from magazines to books was pacing. Like the pacing of a magazine story and a book are really totally different animals. I was really struggling with that. Everyone was in a different place in the process. Maybe someone was later and was trying to figure out, like, how do I get the word out about my book? And we would come together on these Zooms. And I should say, this was at the depths of the pandemic. I was just starting work on this project. And that we had this literal fellowship and that we had each other to go to was everything. It was, I couldn't have done the book without it.
It sounds so amazing. I was like, I've never heard of this. This name alone is enough for me to ask a question about it. What's the word you could never spell correctly on the first try?
There's so many. Commemorate.
Good one.
I mean, oh my gosh, there's so many. I'm blanking on what they are now. I'm a terrible speller. I'm married to a copy editor. And I think maybe it's
wow.
so he can help me. But that actually was like always a note when I was little, was like, she's a great writer, but we're really concerned about her spelling.
This is me. I'm a terrible speller. I'm a terrible speller. That's why this question came to be, because I was like, I can't be the only one.
No, there's certain words where I always still like. You
could tell me how to spell a word, make me memorize a song about it, the whole thing, and I'll still just be like, oops, I don't know.
Right.
Can't do it.
It's so funny. I know.
Are you good at math?
Well, I never thought I was, but then I would score really high on things.
Oh, okay. I was thinking maybe there's something. I'm bad at math, and I feel like that's another thing that's like really like specific. Like you have to like just do the right thing. And so I was like, maybe that's what it is, but no.
It's funny. So my son, who's a teenager, he's going to be going into engineering. He's a math science guy, and he was just explaining to me that the reason he loves math and science and not English and talking about literature, and I love this, is he said, you know, in what I do, there's always, referring to himself, what I do, there's always a right answer. And I was like, yeah, that's exactly what I love about books, is there's not necessarily right, they're interpretations.
Yeah.
You know,
I need a little more space to do my work. You know, I can't be held back by a correct answer.
Exactly.
Do you know what comes next for you?
It's a great question. I would really like to do a book again. I have some ideas that I think are too early to like put out in the world, but that I'm hoping maybe I can explore through my magazine writing
Cool.
after the book tour.
Cool.
And I just I've spent so much of my career focusing on people who are in prison who shouldn't be there,
Yeah.
who have wrongful convictions or other issues. I write a lot about things like junk forensic science and the things that lead people there. I really, really want to write about people who have committed the crimes that they are in for and wrestling with what do we do with that? I wrote a story earlier this year for the Times Magazine about women who are
Yes.
serving life
In
sentences
Oklahoma.
for
Yeah.
killing their
So good.
abusers. Thank you. And to me, that really got into that moral gray area that I'm interested in of,
Yeah.
you know, someone's life was taken. They have a family. We can't ignore that. At the same time, the person who did that was a victim themselves. And so how do we reconcile that? What do we do with that?
Do you know about Unreasonable Women? Justine
Yes.
Vanderlin's
Oh,
book?
Justine's book. Yes.
Yeah.
I have it and I'm so excited to read it. And I think so, so, so highly of her work.
It's really good. She was on the show
Yeah.
a few weeks ago and
She's incredible.
I was really taken with the book. And I was like, I've read this. I've read something about this before, and it was your piece, but I couldn't quite place it. And then I was like, oh, okay, here we go. I got it all together.
She's amazing.
She's amazing, and she, yeah, I'd never really thought about this idea of criminalized survivorship at all, and now it's like all I think about. Great. I can't wait to read whatever it is that you do next.
Thank you so much.
For people who like Catch the Devil, what are some other books that you might recommend to them that are in conversation with your work?
Oh, great question. So Patrick Radden Keefe is my hero, my writing hero. I love his work. And he, in London Falling, and obviously in the books that preceded that, he does that thing that I'm always trying to do of that really immersive storytelling married to characters you're never going to forget. And he makes you feel things. And I feel like that is always the goal. He sets the bar so high. I'm in awe of so many people. They're all people who are magazine writers who transitioned in one way or another to books. Rachel Aviv, who has a book coming out this summer. I just got a galley for Robert Kolker's book.
Oh, the new one?
Yes.
Yeah.
The Vanishing Family. And he wrote, of course, Lost Girls and Hidden Valley Road, which again are stories that just like are so alive on the page. And I'm so excited to read that. The book, I think so far this year that had the biggest impact on me, and I'm sorry to be mentioning all these guy magazine writers, but it just is the crop we're having. Tom Junod wrote an incredible memoir about his father that came out this spring.
Yes.
And that I will not attempt the title. It's like 12 words long and I'll botch
it. It's like what I know of something of
being a man.
Yeah, about being a man. Yeah. It's like Blue.
It's a Led Zeppelin song title that
we'll link to it in the show notes.
Thank you.
It. Yeah.
That book, which again is nonfiction, is so gorgeously written. I mean, more beautifully written than a lot of fiction I've read recently.
Yeah.
There are scenes in which he describes his father where you feel like not just like you're in the room with him, but like you can like touch him, taste him, feel him. It is a very tactile book. And the way he wrestles with, this man he loves so much, who he's modeled himself in some ways on, and who he's also so repelled by because he does some really terrible things. It's so incredible. And the last third of the book, this is also true of London Falling, the last third of both of those books it's like revelation after revelation after revelation. Like, what am I going to find out on the next page? And there's so much buildup leading to it, heading there, that when you get there, you're just like, let's do this. This is,
okay.
They're both page turners.
Okay. Okay. Oh, I'm excited. I'm excited to read. Okay. Last question. If you could have one person, dead or alive, read this book, who would you want it to be?
Oh my gosh. One person, dead or alive, who could read this book. Who would I want it to be? There's so many people I could think of. Well, I hope this isn't too sad of an answer. So my father died in 1992, and he worked in journalism. He worked at CBS News and at 60 Minutes, and he never saw my journalism career. I was just a kid when he passed away, and I would love for him to see, what I was able to do. And I think and hope he would be proud of me. I should have a better answer about a particular author.
No, that's a great answer.
But honestly, not to be too cheesy or whatever, but the act of getting blurbs for a book, which is like, oh my God, is there anything more painful than having to ask? It's scary enough to say hi to one of your heroes, much less like throw yourself at their feet, knowing they have no time, and ask them for something. But I was insane
blurbs.
I was so fortunate to get a lot of my heroes to read it through those.
Yeah. I part of the reason that I picked up this book is I was like, there's too many good blurbs from people whose work I love. You've got Patrick Radden Keefe, Lawrence Wright, Robert Golker, Rachel Levine. Like it's like a murderer's row. All right, party people, you can Catch the Devil out in the world now, wherever you get your books. I highly recommend it. I listened to a little bit of the audio. She does a fantastic job. So if you're an audio person, this one for sure, check it out on audio. Pamela, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. This was such a treat. Thank you so much. Thank you for what you do.
Oh, thank you. And everyone else, we will see you in the stacks. All right, y'all, that's it for today. Thank you so much for listening. And thank you again to Pamela Colloff for joining the show. I'd also like to say a quick thank you to Kelly Shai for her assistance in making this episode possible. Our book club pick for July is Behind the Beautiful Forevers, Life, Death, and Hope in a Mumbai Undercity by Catherine Bu. We will discuss the book with Juliana Hopner on Wednesday, July 29th. If you like this show, if you want inside access to it, go to patreon.com/thestacks and join the Stacks Pack, and check out my newsletter at traceythomas.substack.com. Get yourself some perks, support the show. Make sure you're subscribed to the Stacks wherever you listen to your podcasts. And if you're listening through Apple Podcasts or Spotify, take a moment right now. Please leave us a rating and a review. Help people find the show. Give us a little boost. It goes a long way. It's a super easy thing you can do right now. For more from The Stacks, follow us on social media at The Stacks Pod on Instagram, Threads, and now YouTube. And you can check out our website at thestackspodcast.com. This episode of The Stacks was edited by Christian Duenas with production assistance from Sahara Clement. Additional support was provided by Cherie Marquez, and our theme music is from Tigirigis. The Stacks is created and produced by me, Tracey Thomas.